Sometimes life can feel like a grand stage show where we enter on cue, deliver our lines, and exit without questioning the script. We interact with others based on expectations handed down to us, trusting that what we experience is exactly as it seems. Yet underneath this surface, there lingers a quiet suspicion that there might be layers we have never explored. We glance around at news headlines, social media posts, and the endless parade of advertisements, each proclaiming a version of reality that competes with the next. We might suspect that some of these portrayals are incomplete, but the idea that our own personal reality could be a carefully woven illusion is harder to accept. After all, who wants to admit that the roadmap for living, our cherished beliefs and routines, might be missing important details? Even so, there comes a moment when the seams begin to show, and we are forced to confront the unsettling possibility that so much of what we take for granted could be more fragile and malleable than we ever imagined. At first, these small realizations feel like cracks in a mighty wall. They may start with something trivial. A friend behaves in a way that contradicts everything we thought we knew about them, or we notice a pattern in our decisions that reveals we have been acting against our own interests. What was once sturdy begins to quake. If we follow those tremors, we find ourselves on a path of deeper inquiry, rummaging through assumptions like dusty boxes in an attic. Some boxes contain artifacts from long ago, stories we inherited from our upbringing, partial truths we gleaned from movies, half-remembered warnings from older relatives that shaped our sense of safety. Other boxes are more recent, filled with constant digital chatter that attempts to define who we should be and how we should live. Together, these boxes form a framework that seems to hold our lives in place. Yet with each new discovery, we realize that many of these illusions were assembled by outside hands. In stepping back, we can begin to see the patchwork of influences that guided us to think and feel the way we do. This recognition, while uncomfortable, can also be liberating. It is the first key to understanding how illusions take root. They are not always malevolent or intentional, yet they become powerful when left unexamined. They perpetuate themselves through familiarity, giving us the comfort of feeling at home in our own beliefs. It is only when cracks appear that we might question whether this home was built on stable ground. When the illusions begin to fracture, something remarkable can happen. Curiosity awakens. That curiosity propels us beyond the threshold of what we thought was real, inspiring us to step across it into uncharted territory. We may do so hesitantly, uncertain if we'll find a firmer footing on the other side. But once a glimpse of a bigger, bolder truth shines through, it becomes impossible to unsee. It is in that light that we begin a new journey. This journey often starts in the smallest moments, when we catch ourselves making an automatic assumption, or when an old piece of advice no longer aligns with how we want to live. Perhaps we recognize that we've been defining success by standards that leave us empty inside, or see that a long-standing conflict with a loved one rests on a misunderstanding we've never questioned. Each tiny jolt of awareness can unsettle the ground beneath us, suggesting there's more to life than these carefully curated narratives. If we allow ourselves to be guided by that unsettled feeling, we begin to see illusions for what they are: constructs. They are frameworks held together by repetition, social reinforcement, and a deep desire for stability. Our minds, wired for survival, welcome familiar beliefs, because predictability feels safe. When a belief system remains unchallenged, it offers a certain sense of security. We don't have to question the world around us. We simply respond to it based on well-worn patterns. Over time, these patterns become so ingrained that they feel like absolute truths. We forget that they were once merely options, interpretations, or temporary coping mechanisms adopted to help us navigate life. This forgetting is how illusions become invisible. They hide in plain sight, woven seamlessly into the fabric of our daily routines. From the opinions we hold about strangers on the street to our deepest convictions about our place in the universe, illusions can permeate every level of our thinking. The enormity of that realization might scare us, which is why many of us try to ignore the cracks for as long as possible. We cling to what is known, even if it's flawed, because the alternative, admitting we have much to learn, can feel overwhelming. Yet every now and then, something happens that shatters our complacency. It could be an unexpected life event that dismantles a cherished belief, or a series of smaller revelations that collectively erode the foundation of our worldview. In that shattering, we have a choice: resist or explore. To resist is to try to patch up the cracks, to double down on explanations that no longer hold water. It is an attempt to preserve our sense of normalcy, even as the illusions crumble. But to explore is to move into unknown territory, to ask questions like, what if I've been wrong about this? What if reality is far more nuanced than I assumed? Exploration leads us away from knee-jerk certainties toward deeper insight. However, it also requires courage, because stepping into uncharted territory means letting go of the safety net that illusions provide. Without illusions, we feel exposed, uncertain, and often vulnerable. Yet this vulnerability is precisely where genuine growth thrives. Realizing that the world is not as it seems is both daunting and exhilarating, for it hints at a much richer tapestry of life, waiting to be discovered once the veils are lifted. One might wonder why these illusions have such a strong hold on us in the first place. After all, if they are incomplete or inaccurate, why do we perpetuate them? The answer lies in the human desire for coherence. We are storytellers by nature. Our brains continuously weave narratives that help us make sense of our experiences, creating a cohesive picture of who we are and how the world works. These narratives often rely on shortcuts, assumptions, stereotypes, and inherited beliefs, because meticulously re-evaluating every piece of information in real time would be exhausting. Thus, illusions serve a psychological function. They streamline the complexity of life, helping us move through our days without feeling perpetually overwhelmed. They also bond us to others who share similar stories, offering a sense of community and validation. When we align with a group that reinforces the same set of illusions, we feel less alone and more secure in our worldview. This sense of belonging is potent. It can keep us in a comfortable loop, accepting group consensus as fact, even if we sense deep down that something might not align with the fuller truth. The protective warmth of acceptance is far more appealing than the cold isolation of questioning what everyone else seems to agree on. Yet illusions also create barriers between us and authentic experiences. By adhering to a predetermined story, we might miss opportunities for deeper connection, transformative insights, or novel approaches to problems we face. The illusions act like tinted lenses, filtering out the colors that don't match our preconceived notions. When we finally remove those lenses, the world can appear startlingly vibrant, alive with possibilities we never considered before. This is why illusions, once recognized, can feel stifling. They no longer align with the emerging sense that reality is far grander than our mental constructs. In a paradoxical twist, illusions that once offered security can become confining cages. Like a bird that finds the door of its cage ajar, we are faced with a dilemma. Do we remain within these safe, familiar bars, or do we risk venturing into the open sky? Some choose the cage, drawn back by fear of the unknown, while others allow curiosity to guide them toward freedom. Of course, freedom from illusions doesn't mean stepping into a life devoid of uncertainty. In fact, it often ushers in more questions than answers. But this stage of unknowing can be a fertile ground for true wisdom. By relinquishing the false clarity of illusions, we make space for genuine learning. We embrace the complexity of existence, recognizing that truth may reveal itself in layers, each one unveiling a fresh perspective. This is not a path for the faint-hearted. It requires the willingness to let go of cherished beliefs and face the disorientation of discovering how much more there is to see. But for those who dare, it can be the beginning of a transformative process, one that enriches every aspect of life and imbues it with a new sense of wonder. At some point along this path, we may realize that illusions are deeply tied to our sense of identity. We are not just questioning ideas about the outside world. We are questioning ourselves, our motivations, our histories, and our self-imposed limitations. Here, the process can become more personal and raw. We might see how we've invested in certain narratives about who we are or who we should be. Perhaps we believe we are unlovable unless we perform or succeed, or that we must always appear strong and composed to gain respect. These internal illusions can carry tremendous weight, dictating our emotional responses and influencing our choices without us ever recognizing their hidden hand. As we start to notice these patterns, it can feel like pulling back the curtains on a backstage area where the real set is half built and the actors are still rehearsing their lines. The persona we present to the world is not necessarily our authentic self, but rather a mosaic of expectations, fears, and inherited beliefs. No wonder it can be so exhausting to maintain. There is a reason many people describe self-realization as waking up from a dream. Suddenly, we see how we have been playing a role, asleep to the deeper nature of our own consciousness. Yet the prospect of uncovering our genuine selves is both thrilling and unnerving. If we are not all these stories we have told ourselves, then who are we? In the face of this question, some of us may scramble to patch up the cracks and return to the familiar role, no matter how restricting it might be. Others, however, sense a quiet excitement stirring beneath the fear, an inkling that beyond these old narratives lies a more authentic, expansive way of being. Embracing that possibility demands shedding layers of self-deception and conditioning, sometimes built up over decades. This shedding is rarely a neat or linear process. It can involve setbacks where we slip back into old beliefs because they feel comforting. But each step forward reveals a bit more of the underlying truth that was always waiting for us. At times, it can feel like we are losing parts of ourselves, but in reality, we are simply letting go of what never truly belonged to us in the first place. The more we strip away these false constructs, the more deeply we can connect with our genuine nature. It is a bit like clearing a fogged mirror. The reflection may be startling at first because it shows us without the usual filters, but in that clear view, we may discover a profound sense of relief. We are no longer obliged to live up to illusions about who we are supposed to be. We can begin to live in harmony with our true impulses, talents, and yearnings, forging a path that resonates authentically from the inside out. As we peel away illusions about ourselves, we also start seeing external illusions with sharper clarity. Those illusions that define success, happiness, and meaning in rigid or purely materialistic ways start to crumble when we realize they often serve someone else's agenda. Whether we look at consumer culture telling us we need endless upgrades to feel complete, or social hierarchies that pit us against one another, it becomes evident how many of these constructs persist simply because people continue to believe in them. Letting go of these external illusions can be both freeing and disconcerting. We might find ourselves less interested in the games society invites us to play. The rat race may lose its appeal when we realize it's built on a premise that fulfillment must come from endless acquisition or constant comparison. At the same time, we may feel isolated as we no longer resonate with the motivations that fuel so many around us. This is often a turning point where new communities, relationships, or pursuits emerge, ones that emphasize authenticity over social status or superficial gains. In this sense, dropping illusions can open doors to new ways of life that genuinely nourish our well-being and contribute to collective growth. Rather than chasing applause, we might find joy in creativity or community service. Instead of striving to project an image of success at all costs, we might redefine success in terms of alignment with our values and personal growth. Such shifts can feel radical to those who remain invested in the illusions we've left behind. Friends, family, or colleagues might question our decisions or accuse us of being unrealistic. This friction can create tension, as illusions are often socially reinforced. When one person steps away from them, it can challenge the comfort of those who remain inside the familiar framework. However, it's important to remember that this tension is not necessarily a sign of error, but of transformation. Navigating the space between old illusions and new realizations requires patience, both with ourselves and with those who are not on the same timetable of awakening. Compassion is key here. We can recall our own initial resistance to challenging illusions and recognize that everyone has their own pace and threshold for stepping into uncertainty. By embodying our newfound clarity rather than preaching it, we provide a living example that a different way of engaging with life is possible. Over time, the authenticity and peace we cultivate in living beyond certain illusions can be far more persuasive than any argument. What matters is that we continue to explore our evolving sense of reality and remain open to the layers that reveal themselves along the way. We discover that letting illusions fall away is not about discarding everything we once knew, but rather about refining and clarifying the lens through which we view and engage with the world, allowing a more nuanced reality to shine through. In many spiritual or philosophical traditions, the dismantling of illusions is described as a path toward liberation or awakening. This language might sound grand or esoteric, but at its core, it speaks to a deeply human experience. When illusions dissolve, a new sense of spaciousness emerges. The mind feels less burdened by rigid beliefs, and the heart opens to experiences that were previously overshadowed by mental chatter. It's as if the internal landscape expands, allowing us to perceive subtleties and connections that were always there, but obscured by layers of interpretation. In some teachings, what is discovered beneath illusions is described as the true nature of consciousness, a still, quiet center from which all thoughts and emotions arise. From this vantage point, we can witness the ebb and flow of experience without becoming wholly entangled in it. However, this doesn't mean we cease to feel or participate in life. On the contrary, many who have tread this path describe feeling more vibrantly alive, capable of engaging deeply with the world while maintaining an internal anchor of clarity. This union of presence and discernment can transform ordinary moments into opportunities for insight. Simple activities, like washing dishes or walking in the park, become chances to observe our surroundings and ourselves without the automatic filter of preconceived notions. We might notice how a breeze carries a certain scent that reminds us of childhood, or observe how our mind rushes to form judgments about a stranger based on fleeting impressions. The difference is that from a clearer perspective, we see these processes unfolding without mistaking them for the whole truth. Yet even after such awakenings, illusions can reassert themselves. Old habits and beliefs do not always vanish overnight. They might resurface in times of stress or fatigue, momentarily pulling us back into old ways of perceiving. The journey of dismantling illusions is rarely a linear progression. It's a spiraling path where each loop brings deeper understanding. Instead of feeling discouraged when illusions pop up again, we can greet them as teachers that highlight areas where we still hold tension or unexamined biases. This approach transforms setbacks into opportunities for continued growth, making the process of awakening a lifelong endeavor rather than a one-time event. Along the way, we may seek guidance from mentors, books, or communities that resonate with our evolving perspective. Yet, we must remain discerning, as even within these circles, illusions can flourish if they turn dogmatic. The goal is not to exchange one rigid set of beliefs for another, but rather to develop the inner capacity to question, reflect, and adapt. In that sense, a true teacher or companion on this path empowers us to listen to our own inner wisdom, rather than imposing a new worldview to replace the old. With each step, we become our own guide, forging a relationship with reality that is ever-changing, grounded in curiosity, rather than in the need for absolute certainties. A natural companion to this process is the cultivation of stillness and introspection. In our modern world, distraction seems to be at an all-time high. Countless notifications, advertisements, and voices clamor for our attention. This bombardment can encourage us to remain on the surface of experience, perpetually reacting to external stimuli rather than reflecting on how they fit into a larger pattern. Yet without moments of quiet reflection, it's easy for illusions to flourish unchecked, hidden beneath the relentless noise of daily life. Engaging in a regular practice of stillness, whether through meditation, silent walks, journaling, or any activity that fosters sustained attention, can serve as a powerful antidote. It's in these spaces that illusions often float to the surface of our awareness, making themselves known for the first time. Suddenly, we recognize a recurring thought pattern or a stubborn assumption that colors our interactions. This is a crucial step: awareness. Before we can dismantle illusions, we must be able to see them clearly. Once noticed, we can explore their origins. Did this belief arise from early childhood experiences, from cultural conditioning, or from a place of fear? Understanding the roots of an illusion doesn't always cause it to vanish instantly, but it can loosen its grip by revealing the narratives that sustain it. Over time, the illusions that once felt so entangled with our identity begin to look more like outdated mental programs. We can observe them without automatically identifying with them. This shift in perspective is enormous. It empowers us to choose a response rather than being driven by unconscious habits. In stillness, we also become more attuned to our intuition, which can serve as a guide to deeper truths. Intuition here is not impulsive or unexamined feeling, but a subtle knowing that emerges when the chatter of the mind subsides. It's like tuning into a quieter frequency, where insights about our path, relationships, and purpose can arise spontaneously. While intuition should also be balanced with critical thinking, it offers another dimension of understanding that purely analytical thought might overlook. Of course, carving out time for stillness can be challenging in a busy life. However, even brief intervals, 5 or 10 minutes, can begin to foster an environment where illusions are more readily seen and questioned. The key is consistency. Like learning any skill, cultivating inner stillness grows easier with practice. As this practice matures, it nourishes a calmer, more centered approach to living. We find ourselves less easily swayed by external dramas or the illusions spun by mass culture. Instead, we carry an inner sanctuary wherever we go, a place where illusions can be gently observed and ultimately dissolved. And as those illusions disintegrate, the path toward a more genuine life grows wider and more welcoming. Sometimes, the illusions we hold are tied to collective agreements rather than solely personal ones. Societies at large can operate under mutual illusions, shared beliefs that shape laws, institutions, and cultural practices. Examples might include economic structures that prioritize endless growth in a finite world, or social norms that pigeonhole individuals based on gender, race, or class without considering the full spectrum of human potential. These collective illusions can be incredibly powerful because they are reinforced by the majority. Questioning them can feel like standing up in the middle of a crowded theater to announce that the stage play everyone is enjoying is based on a flawed script. The discomfort or backlash can be swift and forceful. Yet throughout history, every significant social transformation, from the abolition of slavery to movements for civil rights, has involved groups of people stepping beyond society's illusions to champion a more equitable and humane vision. This demonstrates that illusions, even those deeply embedded in societal fabric, can be dismantled, but the process is rarely neat. It can entail conflict, resistance, and even a temporary sense of chaos as old structures collapse and new ones take root. On a personal level, recognizing collective illusions can transform the way we engage with the broader world. We might shift our spending habits to align with values of sustainability, or become involved in grassroots initiatives that question prevailing norms. These choices may not change massive systems overnight, but they become seeds for gradual change. When enough individuals pivot their actions away from collective illusions, tipping points can occur, and entire societies can begin to shift toward more authentic, inclusive paradigms. This facet of illusion shattering underscores the interconnectedness of our individual journeys with the collective sphere. Our personal insights and actions do not exist in a vacuum. As we awaken to deeper truths, we inevitably influence the circles we move in: family, friends, colleagues, and community. We embody an alternative way of seeing and being, inviting others to consider perspectives they may have long overlooked. This can spark both curiosity and resistance, depending on where someone stands in relation to the collective illusions being questioned. But even resistance has a role, as it forces illusions out into the open where they can be more thoroughly examined. It's easy to underestimate the significance of one person's awakening in a world of billions, but history shows that widespread change often begins with a handful of committed souls who dare to think differently. The illusions that once seemed unassailable start to show their cracks, proving they were never absolute truths, but rather stories perpetuated by consensus. As more individuals adopt a clearer view, the collective conversation begins to shift. Over time, new policies, technologies, or cultural expressions can emerge that reflect a deeper understanding of reality. Thus, the journey of dismantling illusions becomes not only a personal liberation, but a communal endeavor, one in which each awakened perspective acts as a catalyst for broader transformation. It's important to acknowledge that uncovering illusions can sometimes stir emotional turbulence. When we first realize that aspects of our life, identity, or society are built on shaky ground, it can spark feelings of anger, betrayal, or deep sadness. We might feel resentment toward those who perpetuated the illusions, or regret for the time spent living within them. These reactions are normal. They reflect a sense of loss for what we once believed to be true and stable. However, it's equally important to recognize that these emotions can be gateways to healing. When we allow ourselves to feel the disappointment or anger that arises as illusions crumble, we also open ourselves to a deeper level of honesty and clarity. We begin to see the raw material of our experiences for what it is, a mix of social influences, personal choices, and random events. In letting go of illusions, we also let go of the denial or avoidance that might have kept us from processing these feelings in the past. To move through this phase productively, we can practice compassion toward ourselves and others. Compassion does not mean excusing harmful behaviors or pretending that misleading narratives had no consequences. Rather, it acknowledges that we all inherit illusions from our surroundings. We absorb them before we have the maturity or information to question them. Even those who might knowingly spread illusions do so from a place shaped by their own limitations, fears, or desires for control. Recognizing this can soften the sharp edges of blame and allow space for genuine transformation. Embracing compassion does not require us to remain passive or accept harmful systems. On the contrary, it can fuel a resolve to create change, guided by empathy rather than resentment. We can channel the energy that arises from these emotional stirrings into thoughtful action and meaningful dialogue. Instead of simply tearing down what was, we can begin to imagine and build structures that align more closely with truth, fairness, and collective well-being. At the personal level, this might look like reevaluating career goals, nurturing healthier relationships, or finding life-affirming ways to contribute to society. On a collective level, it can lead to involvement in social initiatives, civic participation, or the support of innovations that challenge outdated norms. Through these expressions, the emotional turmoil can become a catalyst for positive change. Allowing the full spectrum of our emotional responses without clinging to them helps ensure we do not remain in a state of perpetual disillusionment. Instead, we can move toward a place of discernment, where our eyes remain open to the potential illusions that still lurk, but our hearts remain open to possibilities for growth. In that balanced stance, aware yet hopeful, we stand poised to continue dismantling illusions wherever they arise, transforming the unsettling process of losing old certainties into a powerful opportunity for renewal. In the midst of all this introspection, it can be helpful to remember that our bodies are integral to our experience of both illusions and truths. We often think of illusions as operating solely on the level of thoughts, but the body registers every moment of our lives. Stress manifests as tension in our muscles, and anxiety can disrupt our breathing patterns. When we hold illusions about what we must do or who we must be, the body can reflect this constriction, taking shallow breaths or tightening the chest. Conversely, moments of clarity and authentic insight often correlate with a physiological sense of ease, as though the body recognizes the resonance of truth. This link between body and mind is why practices that involve somatic awareness can be so beneficial on the path of dismantling illusions. By regularly checking in with our physical sensations, perhaps noticing where we feel tense or relaxed, we develop a barometer for when we might be buying into an illusion. We might notice a knot in the stomach right when we are trying to convince ourselves of a false narrative. Over time, we learn to trust the body's signals as invitations to pause and examine what's really going on beneath the surface. This awareness can lead to micro-adjustments in our daily life. We may catch ourselves in a moment of self-criticism and physically release tension in the shoulders. We might realize we are holding our breath when scrolling through anxiety-inducing news feeds, prompting us to step away for a moment of grounding. These small choices can accumulate into significant changes in how we navigate our internal and external environments. Beyond moment-to-moment awareness, there are also many body-centered practices, yoga, tai chi, mindful walking, that can help realign our mental and physical states. These disciplines cultivate presence, teaching us to inhabit our bodies with attention instead of rushing through life on autopilot. In such practices, illusions about the body itself, such as negative self-image or unrealistic performance expectations, can also come to light. As we move with care and acceptance, we might realize how often we judge or push our bodies in ways that reinforce harmful illusions about beauty or achievement. Recognizing this opens the door to a more compassionate relationship with ourselves, where body and mind collaborate rather than compete. In this integrated approach, the process of shattering illusions becomes holistic. We are not just changing our thoughts, we are shifting how we carry ourselves in the world. The synergy between mind and body can catalyze deeper breakthroughs, revealing the extent to which illusions infiltrate all levels of our being. That revelation, though sometimes surprising, can ultimately empower us. We come to see that by tending to the body with the same curiosity and care we devote to the mind, we cultivate a grounded, embodied presence, one that stands in stark contrast to the disembodied swirl of illusions that once defined our day-to-day reality. In tandem with acknowledging the role of the body, we can explore the power of breath as a direct route to grounding ourselves in the present moment. When illusions rattle our sense of stability, the breath can act as an anchor, reconnecting us to the here and now. A simple yet transformative technique involves consciously adjusting the rhythm of our breathing to calm the mind and settle the nervous system. One method that many find effective is sometimes called the 4-7-8 technique. To practice it, begin by exhaling fully through the mouth, making a soft whooshing sound. Then close the mouth and inhale quietly through the nose for a slow count of 4. Hold that breath for a count of 7, maintaining as much stillness in the body as possible. Finally, exhale through the mouth for a count of 8, releasing the air steadily until the lungs feel completely emptied. Repeat this cycle for a total of 4 rounds initially, eventually increasing to 8 rounds if comfortable. The essence of this exercise is to elongate the exhalation and introduce a pause in the breath, which signals the nervous system to shift away from a stress response. While counting, the mind gains a focal point, preventing it from spiraling into anxious thoughts or illusions of impending doom. If the numbers 4, 7, and 8 feel challenging, one can slightly shorten or lengthen them while preserving the same ratio. Over time, the body adapts, and the practice becomes both smoother and more deeply calming. The real power of a technique like this lies in its simplicity and accessibility. It requires no equipment, can be done almost anywhere, and often delivers noticeable relief in under a minute. Moreover, the mere act of directing our attention to the breath interrupts automatic thought patterns. By cultivating this pause, we gain a momentary vantage point from which to observe the illusions that might be fueling stress or unrest. Regular use of such a breathing technique can have cumulative benefits, training us to respond differently when illusions arise. Instead of reacting impulsively or buying into an agitated story, we have a practical tool to restore equilibrium. This doesn't mean illusions vanish, but it does mean we engage them from a calmer, more centered place. Rather than letting illusions drive the narrative, we can question them, asking if they are grounded in reality or if they are projections of old fears and biases. In time, we might notice that certain illusions lose their intensity. Thoughts or beliefs that once caused panic or distress might arise, but then dissolve more quickly when met with a steady breath and discerning awareness. In this way, breathwork evolves into more than just a relaxation technique. It becomes part of a broader practice of unmasking illusions. Each mindful breath is a subtle declaration that we choose presence over deception, alignment over fragmentation, and curiosity over complacency. While the quest to identify and dissolve illusions can feel deeply personal, it also invites us to reevaluate our interactions with others. Relationships often serve as mirrors that reflect our hidden beliefs and insecurities back to us. At times, conflicts with friends or loved ones can be traced to illusions we hold about how people should behave or how they should make us feel. Recognizing these projections can be humbling. We might realize that we've been clinging to a fantasy that another person could fulfill roles or expectations that are neither realistic nor fair. Alternatively, we could be locked into a narrative where we constantly cast ourselves as victims or saviors. When illusions fuel our relationship dynamics, misunderstandings and disappointment inevitably arise. However, once we see these illusions for what they are, we gain the freedom to relate more genuinely. We discover that true connection thrives not on shared illusions, but on mutual honesty, respect, and the willingness to accept ourselves and each other as we truly are. This shift can lead to a deepening of existing bonds. Old resentments may fall away when we no longer expect friends or family members to validate illusions they never agreed to. At the same time, some relationships may fade when their foundation was primarily built on shared, unspoken agreements about how to preserve comfortable illusions. This is one of the more challenging aspects of the journey, recognizing that not everyone in our lives will feel compelled to undergo the same process of introspection. Some may prefer to remain in their familiar narratives, and we face the difficult choice of whether to adapt or to gently allow distance. Even so, by modeling a more transparent way of relating, we inadvertently create an invitation for others to do the same. Sometimes, people respond with relief, realizing they too were tired of upholding the illusions that kept the relationship in a static loop. Authentic relationships can be a powerful balm against the loneliness that sometimes arises when we question illusions others still hold dear. As we move forward, new connections can form based on shared recognition of life's complexities rather than a superficial alignment of unquestioned beliefs. In such relationships, differences become opportunities for learning rather than triggers for defensive posturing. We can listen more openly, speak more thoughtfully, and create a space where collective insights flourish. This relational clarity also extends to our broader communities, workplaces, and social networks. As we learn to communicate our truths without aggression and to set boundaries without guilt, we strengthen our sense of agency in group settings. Illusions that once governed how we navigated hierarchies or group expectations no longer hold the same sway. Over time, our willingness to operate without pretense can influence collective dynamics, subtly encouraging a more open and genuine culture. Even if those around us resist, our personal alignment remains an invaluable internal guide, ensuring we do not compromise our integrity for the sake of perpetuating illusions that no longer serve us. Another fascinating aspect of dismantling illusions is its influence on creativity and problem-solving. When we operate under fixed assumptions, our mental landscape has little room for the unexpected. we might approach challenges with the same tired strategies, never questioning whether a new perspective could yield an innovative solution. However, as soon as we begin to suspect that what we see isn't the entire truth, our minds open to alternative possibilities. This shift can be astonishingly productive. Suddenly, we're more willing to entertain what-if scenarios, to consider novel approaches, or to acknowledge that the conventional wisdom might not apply in every situation. It's like removing blinders that narrow our field of vision. Through this broader perspective, even long-standing problems can appear in a different light. We might notice patterns we previously overlooked, or realize that a particular approach has been sabotaged by an unspoken assumption. In creative pursuits, be it writing, painting, engineering, or entrepreneurship, this willingness to question illusions can lead to breakthroughs. Freed from the pressure to conform to preconceived ideas, we might merge influences that seem radically different, synthesizing a fresh concept that surprises even us. Once illusions begin to fall away, we start to trust the process of trial and error, rather than seeking immediate perfection. Failure transforms from a dreaded outcome into a learning tool, guiding us closer to genuine insight. While illusions can make us rigid, truth-seeking fosters adaptability. This newfound flexibility applies not only to grand projects, but also to everyday problem-solving. Perhaps we tackle a routine conflict at work in a more open-minded manner, or we adjust the course of a personal plan upon realizing our initial assumptions were misguided. Each time we adapt with clarity rather than defending illusions, we refine our capacity to navigate the unexpected. Moreover, creativity blossoms when we are not shackled by the fear of challenging norms. Illusions can act like invisible cages that keep us from venturing too far outside social or professional expectations. By loosening their grip, we discover a courage to speak up with bold ideas or to experiment in ways that might draw skepticism from those still anchored in conventional thinking. Some of the world's greatest innovations have emerged from individuals or groups who dared to look past society's illusions about what was possible. Yet it's important to remember that genuine creativity thrives on balance, merging imagination with critical discernment. Dismantling illusions doesn't mean we accept every offbeat idea as truth. Instead, we engage in a dynamic dance between exploration and evaluation, allowing ourselves to roam outside the bounds of the ordinary while also testing our ideas against practical, observable data. This synergy of open-mindedness and rigor can yield not only more original outcomes, but also solutions that are grounded, sustainable, and beneficial to the broader community. As illusions unravel, we might also feel a renewed sense of responsibility toward our planet and all forms of life that share this home with us. For a long time, many of us operated under illusions that natural resources were infinite or that human progress had no significant consequences for the environment. But as evidence of ecological stress mounts, melting ice caps, erratic weather patterns, dwindling species, we are collectively awakening to the magnitude of these challenges. Realizing that our lifestyles are intertwined with the health of the planet can be a jarring experience, shattering illusions of endless abundance or detachment from natural systems. In that shattering lies an opportunity to rethink our relationship with the Earth. If we see through the illusion of separation, we come to understand that each decision, what we consume, how we travel, how we use resources, has a ripple effect on ecosystems. With awareness comes the burden of choice. Do we continue business as usual, or do we seek ways to harmonize our actions with ecological realities? Some respond by withdrawing from modern systems, opting for self-sufficiency or minimalistic lifestyles. Others engage with green technologies, pushing for innovations that reduce harm and promote sustainability. Still others focus on policy changes, activism, or educational campaigns. Each approach reflects a willingness to move beyond the illusion that humanity stands apart from nature. This shift in perception often rekindles a sense of wonder about the natural world. When we cease viewing the environment as merely a backdrop for human activities, we begin to notice its profound intricacies. A walk in the forest or a swim in the ocean becomes a dialogue with a living system rather than a casual pastime. The awareness that we are part of an interdependent web can evoke humility. It reminds us that our illusions of control or dominance over nature are just that, illusions. We are participants in a vast community of life, beholden to the same planetary boundaries as every other species. This humbling awareness can fuel a deep reverence for the biosphere. Instead of seeing ourselves as masters, we come to see ourselves as stewards or caretakers, responsible for preserving the delicate balance that sustains life. This perspective shift can also alleviate some of the existential dread that accompanies environmental crises. While the scope of problems is immense, recognizing our interconnection with the world can inspire collaborative efforts and creative solutions. We shift from an us versus them mentality, where nature is something to be exploited or feared, to a cooperative model where mutual thriving is the goal. The destruction of illusions regarding the natural world can thus become a doorway into environmental empathy, activism, and innovation. Rather than viewing the planet's warning signs as inconveniences, we see them as urgent calls to realign our choices. Though the path is complex and fraught with challenges, each step we take with clarity and intention helps to dismantle the outdated illusions that once justified inaction, opening space for more responsible and inspired engagement with our shared home. Dismantling illusions on a grand scale can sometimes lead us into the realm of existential questions: what life means, why we are here, and how we can find purpose in a universe that might appear indifferent to our personal dramas. For some, earlier illusions about a predetermined destiny or a clearly defined moral order may no longer hold up under scrutiny. This can feel both liberating and terrifying. On the one hand, we may sense a new freedom in realizing that our lives are not locked into a rigid script. We can shape our own meaning, guided by values we choose to uphold. On the other hand, we are confronted with the immensity of existence, with no guaranteed blueprint for how best to navigate it. In the absence of illusions that once offered certainty, religious dogmas, societal expectations, or simplistic models of right and wrong, we might feel adrift. Yet drifting can become a profound invitation to explore what truly resonates with our deepest inclinations. Some find solace in adopting a personal spiritual practice, not as an escape, but as a means to experience the vastness of consciousness more directly. Others dive into humanitarian work, finding purpose in alleviating suffering or championing social justice. Some immerse themselves in the arts, giving form to the ineffable. Still others approach life from a more philosophical or scientific angle, seeking insights into the nature of reality through rigorous inquiry. Whatever the path, the absence of illusions can lead to a more honest grappling with the human condition. By acknowledging that we might never have absolute answers, we learn to cherish each moment for the mystery it holds. This can foster a deep sense of humility, as well as a commitment to living with integrity in the face of uncertainty. Existential dread often arises when illusions that once offered security vanish, leaving a void. But that very void can serve as fertile ground for authentic discovery. Like an artist staring at a blank canvas, we possess the creative agency to paint our lives with intentions that align with our evolving truths. The canvas may look intimidating when it's blank, but it also carries the promise of infinite possibilities. Throughout this exploration, community can be invaluable. Sharing existential questions with fellow travelers, be they philosophers, spiritual seekers, or simply curious friends, can make the journey feel less isolating. Engaging in open, respectful dialogue allows us to test our emerging understandings, glean wisdom from others, and refine our beliefs in light of diverse perspectives. Over time, a tapestry of meaning can emerge, woven from threads of personal insight, shared experience, and ongoing inquiry. Even if no ultimate conclusion is reached, the richness lies in the search itself. Freed from rigid illusions, we have the capacity to continually evolve our worldview, adapt to new revelations, and remain receptive to the wonder of being alive. In that process, we might discover that living without certain illusions does not reduce life's depth, but amplifies it, inviting us into a more genuine relationship with ourselves, each other, and the cosmos. A recurring theme in this unfolding process is the interplay between uncertainty and trust. Once illusions begin to crumble, the mind often clamors for a new sense of security, a new narrative to replace the old. Yet jumping to another rigid belief system can simply swap one illusion for a different one. The true challenge is to develop a comfort with ambiguity, to remain open while still making meaningful choices in our daily lives. This stance requires a kind of trust in our capacity to navigate life without clinging to absolutes, trust that we can handle the emotional waves that come with exploring new territory, and trust that solutions can emerge even if we don't have them fully mapped out from the start. This kind of trust is not naive. It recognizes that the world can be unpredictable, that people can disappoint, and that even our own minds can mislead us. Yet, it refuses to collapse into cynicism. Instead, it draws strength from the ever-present possibility of growth and insight. In many ways, cultivating trust in the midst of uncertainty is a deeply spiritual or philosophical practice, though it need not be confined to any particular tradition. It can manifest as a simple, consistent willingness to remain curious rather than closed off, engaged rather than resigned. With time, trust becomes a lens through which we perceive challenges. A sudden job loss, a relationship rupture, or a personal setback might initially trigger old illusions about how life was supposed to unfold. But if we meet these events with an underlying trust that new paths can open, we liberate ourselves from the paralysis of believing the worst. We remain flexible, observing the unfolding situation with clarity rather than succumbing to panic. In doing so, we often discover avenues of transformation that were invisible under the weight of our former certainties. This doesn't mean we approach life in a perpetual state of optimism that denies real dangers or sorrows. Rather, it means we hold space for the full range of human experience, while acknowledging that even in darkness, insights can emerge. The illusions we leave behind, in some sense, free up mental and emotional bandwidth. No longer do we need to maintain elaborate facades or fight to preserve beliefs we secretly question. That energy can be redirected toward creativity, empathy, and resilience. Over time, we might notice that life flows with a bit more grace, not because it's devoid of problems, but because we no longer view every difficulty as an existential threat. We trust ourselves to adapt and learn, even if the lessons are painful. This is a quiet revolution in perspective, one that fosters psychological well-being and a deeper engagement with reality. It becomes easier to appreciate small wonders, to find nuance in everyday interactions and to extend kindness to ourselves and others who are likewise stumbling through the complexities of existence. The path of unveiling illusions might also coincide with a greater emphasis on personal authenticity. After all, when we dismantle illusions, both collective and individual, we are left with the question of how to live in alignment with our unfolding understanding. Authenticity means expressing ourselves in ways that reflect our genuine thoughts, feelings, and values rather than parroting external expectations. Yet authenticity is not simply about speaking our mind bluntly or rejecting social conventions wholesale. It involves discernment, empathy, and a willingness to engage honestly with the context at hand. Sometimes, illusions taught us to hide certain traits or desires because they weren't deemed acceptable. As we break free from these constraints, a richer palette of self-expression becomes available. We might discover hidden talents or suppressed passions that reignite our sense of vitality. Perhaps we realize we loved to dance, but never pursued it because we believed we were too old. Or we find a calling for environmental advocacy that we once dismissed as impractical. Authenticity invites these possibilities to the table without the old filters of fear or doubt. Yet being authentic can also be challenging. Our social circles, workplaces, and even family environments might resist the changes in us, especially if our new expressions disrupt established dynamics. Colleagues might question why we're no longer nodding along in meetings, or loved ones might be unsettled by our refusal to engage in once familiar gossip or judgmental banter. In such instances, authenticity calls for courage, requiring us to stay true to our emerging clarity without becoming arrogant or dismissive of others' comfort zones. Striking this balance often involves respectful communication, patience, and sometimes a willingness to set boundaries for our own well-being. Living authentically also highlights the necessity for self-compassion. We might stumble in our efforts to be genuine, reverting to old patterns under stress or social pressure. Instead of berating ourselves for these slips, we can use them as learning moments, refining our understanding of where illusions still hold sway. Over time, these reflections build resilience and a deeper self-trust. As illusions continue to fade, authenticity blossoms in ways that can transform not only our personal sphere, but our interactions with the world at large. We may bring fresh perspectives to our workplaces, advocating for ethical considerations or inclusive policies. In relationships, authenticity may foster deeper intimacy, as we feel safe to share our vulnerabilities without the mask of pretense. The cumulative effect can be a life marked by congruence, where inner values align more consistently with outer actions. Though the journey may be fraught with misunderstandings or painful separations from those who prefer the status quo, the reward is a growing sense of wholeness. Authentic living is not an endpoint, but an evolving practice, one that grows richer as we continually shed layers of illusion. In doing so, we might finally experience what it means to inhabit our own lives fully and honestly, free from the endless performative loops that once dictated so many of our choices. A common fear that arises when parting ways with illusions is the worry that life might lose its enchantment. Many illusions, after all, are comforting stories or idealistic fantasies that paint the world in bright colors. There's a concern that lifting these rosy filters could leave us in a drab, purely mechanistic reality. Yet for many who walk this path, the opposite proves true. As illusions fall away, the genuine marvels of existence become more visible. The subtle beauty of natural patterns, the complexity of human ingenuity, and the sheer improbability of being alive at all can evoke awe that far surpasses any illusion. When we are no longer fixated on chasing illusions of perpetual happiness or success, we free ourselves to appreciate the ever-shifting dance of life's rhythms. A casual conversation with a stranger might illuminate an unexpected wisdom, or a solitary moment under a starlit sky can remind us of our tiny but meaningful place in the cosmos. These experiences stand on their own, unadorned by the need to label them as perfect or destined. They simply are, and in their unfiltered nature, they often shine with a quiet brilliance. Wonder also arises from the recognition of interconnection. The more illusions of separation dissolve, the more we see how our well-being is linked to that of others and to the planet. This interconnectedness can inspire gratitude. Every day becomes an opportunity to participate in a shared tapestry of existence where small acts of kindness or creativity ripple outward. Whether we're baking bread for neighbors or contributing ideas to a community project, these contributions feel more real and fulfilling when they arise from a place of clarity rather than from illusions of personal gain or hollow prestige. In this state of heightened awareness, the line between the mundane and the miraculous often blurs. A sunrise or a child's laughter can elicit profound joy, not because they fit some preconceived ideal, but because we sense the miracle inherent in each moment's existence. Paradoxically, the loss of certain comforting illusions can usher in a deeper form of enchantment, an enchantment grounded in the recognition that life's complexities and contradictions are themselves wondrous. Even sorrow and challenge can carry a certain sacredness when viewed as essential parts of an evolving journey. Embracing the full spectrum of experience, both light and dark, can yield a nuanced appreciation that illusions, by their nature, could never provide. They often flatten reality into binary terms like good or bad, success or failure, winner or loser. When we step beyond that duality, we discover a world rich with unfolding nuances. Indeed, it is precisely the unpredictability and impermanence of life that lends it a special kind of magic. Each day is a reminder that while illusions might promise a safe script, the real play is far more grand and improvisational. In this unscripted space, we become co-creators of our reality, able to infuse our actions with genuine intention and awe, no longer reliant on illusions to color our world. As the layers of illusion peel away, we often reach a point where we must integrate our insights into the practicalities of everyday life. Illusions can be sticky. Even after major realizations, they tend to resurface in the routines we scarcely think about, from how we spend money to how we manage our time. Perhaps we realize we've been fostering an illusion of busyness, equating frantic activity with importance or productivity. Yet upon closer inspection, we see that much of what we do might be aimed at avoiding our inner world rather than achieving meaningful results. Disrupting these patterns calls for mindful restructuring of our daily habits. This can mean re-examining priorities. Are our choices aligning with the truths we've uncovered, or are they catering to old illusions? Are we continuing commitments that no longer serve our higher values, simply out of habit or fear of disappointing others? By consciously reshuffling tasks, we can free up space to cultivate new habits that support deeper awareness. This could involve scheduling regular breaks for reflection, creating boundaries around technology usage, or ensuring that relationships receive the time and attention they deserve. Small, consistent changes often prove more effective than dramatic overhauls, allowing us to adapt gradually and sustainably to a lifestyle that matches our evolving consciousness. There is also the question of material possessions. Many illusions relate to consumer culture's promise that acquiring more will lead to lasting happiness. Examining our relationship to possessions can reveal illusions about self-worth, status, or security. We might recognize that stockpiling items or chasing the latest trends is less about necessity and more about soothing insecurities that we never fully addressed. Simplifying our belongings or choosing more meaningful and sustainable acquisitions can lighten both physical and mental burdens, leaving us room to explore the new dimensions of life that have opened up. Integrating insights about illusions also affects how we set goals. Instead of chasing achievements that look impressive on paper, we might seek experiences that resonate with our inner calling. For instance, we might choose a hobby that nourishes our creativity over one that merely boosts our social image. Or we might transition to a career path that aligns with genuine interest and ethical considerations, accepting that this might require financial sacrifices or a departure from conventional markers of success. At first, these changes may bring tension. We can feel torn between the lingering pull of old illusions, especially if they once defined our sense of belonging, and the fresh reality we've come to appreciate. Support from like-minded individuals can be invaluable here, offering encouragement and shared wisdom. Over time, the new, more authentic patterns begin to take root, becoming second nature. The illusions that once dictated our schedules and desires lose their power when we consistently act in ways that affirm our newfound clarity. Bit by bit, our daily lives start to reflect the deeper truths we've encountered, demonstrating that dismantling illusions isn't just an internal shift. It's a transformation that permeates the outer world we inhabit. In walking this path, we may find ourselves becoming more attuned to synchronicities, moments that seem too meaningful or timely to be mere coincidences. While illusions can cause us to shrug off such events or explain them away, clarity invites us to observe them with curiosity. We might spot patterns linking our internal shifts to external opportunities, like encountering a book or person at exactly the right time, or noticing how certain challenges arise precisely when we're ready to confront them. Some interpret these synchronicities as signs of a deeper order or intelligence at play. Others see them as manifestations of our own sharpened awareness, now able to detect patterns and connections previously lost in the noise of illusions. Either way, these moments can feel affirming, as though the universe or our own psyche is responding to our growing clarity, presenting us with lessons or helpers to guide the next steps. This newfound sensitivity might also extend to our emotional and energetic fields. We become more discerning about the environments we immerse ourselves in and the company we keep. Situations that once went unnoticed might now feel draining, while simpler, quieter spaces might provide a sense of renewal. It's as if our internal antenna becomes more finely tuned, detecting subtleties that once escaped our notice. This can require boundaries we previously lacked the confidence to set. We learn to say no to commitments, relationships, or habits that perpetuate illusions or stifle our authenticity. While this can create initial friction, especially if others are used to us fulfilling certain roles, it ultimately paves the way for more genuine connections and experiences. The more illusions we leave behind, the more we may long for sincerity and depth in all areas of life. Paradoxically, as we refine our inner compass, we might also become more flexible in our worldviews. Recognizing that illusions can arise from rigid thinking, we practice meeting new information with an open mind. This openness doesn't imply gullibility, rather, it signifies a willingness to hold evolving perspectives until enough data or personal insight confirms or refines them. In essence, we shift from dogmatic certainty to a living, responsive form of knowing. Over time, synchronicities, emotional awareness, and evolving perspectives weave together into a coherent yet dynamic lifestyle. There's a fluidity in how we address challenges, a calmness in how we handle the unexpected, and a sincerity in our interactions. The illusions that once colored our perceptions seem less and less relevant, like outdated maps of a territory we've now partially explored firsthand. While no one can fully map the infinite complexities of life, leaving illusions behind makes the journey more genuine. We grow comfortable navigating with an ever-updating compass rather than a fixed, illusory chart. It's an ongoing dance between the known and the unknown, with each step revealing deeper layers of ourselves and the world, confirming again that what truly sets us free first shakes the very foundation on which we once stood. Of course, the endeavor to move past illusions does not mean that life becomes a perpetual state of enlightenment. Moments of clarity can be interspersed with times of confusion. Old triggers can resurface, and external pressures can momentarily cloud our insights. However, each time we regain our footing, we do so with a slightly more expansive awareness. We gradually learn to approach setbacks not as failures, but as integral parts of a cyclical process where each descent can lead to a richer ascent. This outlook encourages resilience rather than perfectionism. It also underscores the value of self-compassion and humor. Being able to laugh at our human foibles, the times we catch ourselves readopting illusions we thought we had discarded, fosters a lighter touch. Instead of chastising ourselves, we recognize that unlearning deeply embedded illusions is rarely linear. By adopting a playful curiosity, we keep our hearts open to new realizations without the baggage of self-judgment. This ongoing cycle of insight and relapse can be observed in various wisdom traditions that speak of the spiral nature of growth. Whether framed in terms of spiritual enlightenment, personal development, or psychological maturation, the principle remains that growth occurs in waves, each wave building on the last. This iterative process can continue for a lifetime, ensuring that our humility grows alongside our understanding. Interestingly, as illusions fall away, we may find ourselves caring more deeply for the well-being of others. Empathy can expand when we no longer view life solely through the lens of personal illusions. We see how widespread and normalized certain illusions are, how they can cause suffering for people who feel trapped by societal expectations or personal misconceptions. This expanded empathy can stir a desire to support others on their paths, not by preaching our insights, but by offering genuine presence. We may find that simply listening deeply to someone's concerns without imposing our perspective can be an act of profound kindness. If asked, we can share our experiences of facing illusions, but we do so without insisting that our way is the only path. In this sense, dismantling illusions lays the groundwork for more nuanced, compassionate relationships, both intimate and collective. By extension, communities that embrace this ethos can become beacons for transformation. Within these groups, authenticity, mutual respect, and continual learning are prized over dogma or rigid protocols. Such communities can serve as a counterbalance to the illusion-sustaining mechanisms present in broader society: commercialism, sensational media, polarizing rhetoric. While no community is perfect or immune to illusions, a shared commitment to ongoing reflection helps guard against stagnation or dogmatic drift. As individuals and communities alike continue the work of recognizing and transcending illusions, we contribute to an ever-evolving conversation about what it means to live in alignment with truth. Though the process can be messy and the endpoint undefined, each step forward enriches the collective tapestry of human understanding, making the intangible more tangible, the hidden more known, and the mysterious more openly embraced. In many respects, the journey of breaking illusions is akin to crossing a threshold between two worlds, the familiar realm where stories and assumptions go unchallenged, and a new territory where everything is subject to exploration. Once we've glimpsed the second world, returning to the first with complete innocence is nearly impossible. We carry the memory of that wider vista within us, even if we momentarily slip back into old patterns. This threshold experience can be likened to a rite of passage, though it doesn't typically involve a formal ceremony. It's more of an internal shift, a quiet earthquake that restructures our inner landscape. The sense of crossing over can manifest in both subtle and overt ways. We might notice ourselves choosing honesty over social niceties in moments where authenticity truly matters, or we may find a sudden ease in releasing grudges that once felt impossible to let go. While we still experience life's ups and downs, the perspective from which we view them has changed. We know there is more beyond the illusions. Stepping across this threshold can stir a sense of purpose. No longer content with superficial engagements, we might feel called to contribute to the world in ways that honor the truths we've discovered. This doesn't require grand gestures. It might be as simple as offering compassion to someone struggling with illusions of their own, or gently introducing new ideas in a workplace resistant to change. Each action, no matter how small, can be imbued with the deeper understanding we've gained. Indeed, the difference between the two worlds often lies not in external circumstances, but in our mode of engagement. We recognize that illusions, while sometimes comforting, ultimately limit our capacity for connection, creativity, and love. With this realization, fear may arise, a fear that living authentically could isolate us from those still ensnared in illusions, or that we might fail to uphold our new principles. Yet it's precisely by facing such fears that we develop resilience. Each courageous act of being true to our evolving sense of reality builds confidence, showing us that life remains rich and in many ways becomes even richer when we forego illusions. This threshold is not a one-time crossing. We may straddle it periodically, venturing deeper into the new territory, then slipping back under the weight of old habits. This back and forth is not a failure, but a natural aspect of transformative learning. Over time, the new territory becomes more familiar, its principles more habitual. We develop an internal compass that more readily guides us there, even under stress. In this sense, the threshold is less of a line drawn in sand and more of an invitation that remains open at all times. Each moment offers a choice, to lean into illusions or to step out of them. No one can make that choice for us, and therein lies the ultimate freedom. We become the authors of our own experience, co-creating our reality with each breath and each thought, ever mindful of how illusions distort and how clarity liberates. Because this entire quest can sound daunting, it's worth remembering that the process of unraveling illusions is not solely about confrontation and loss. It also involves a blossoming of new understandings, connections, and inner capabilities. We might emerge from these experiences with a heightened sense of compassion, not just for others, but for ourselves. Compassion can be a guiding light that helps us navigate the sometimes winding, unpredictable road that appears when illusions crumble. Compassion toward ourselves is crucial because the journey can expose old wounds, personal traumas, regrets, or unmet longings that illusions once helped us ignore. Confronting these hurts head-on can be emotionally intense, yet it's also deeply healing. As illusions recede, we may finally have the bandwidth to process long-buried emotions and reframe our past experiences in a more integrative way. This healing can feel like a recalibration of our entire system, allowing us to move forward without the subtle heaviness that once weighed us down. Compassion also extends outward. Recognizing our own fragility, we see the fragility in others. We understand that illusions are often coping mechanisms shaped by cultural conditioning or personal hardship. This recognition doesn't absolve harmful actions, but it does open a space for empathy. We see that, at some level, we are all trying to make sense of a world that can be both beautiful and terrifying. This shared human endeavor becomes a bridge that can unite us across differences, if we let it. Another promising development is the emergence of deeper joy. This joy is not the fleeting high that comes from chasing illusory goals. Rather, it's a more enduring contentment rooted in acceptance of life's inherent unpredictability. When we cease trying to force reality into a narrow script, we free ourselves to appreciate what is, even when it doesn't match our expectations. A sense of gratitude can flow more naturally, unencumbered by illusions of entitlement or scarcity. This isn't to say that dismantling illusions will solve every problem or eliminate suffering. Life remains challenging, and pain is an inevitable part of the human experience. But our relationship to pain shifts. We no longer layer illusions of permanence or unjust victimhood on top of it. Pain can be seen as a signal, a catalyst for learning, or a prompt for compassion. This perspective change might not make pain less real, but it can render it more meaningful and less likely to spiral into destructive narratives. Finally, there's a clarity that emerges in life's overarching direction. Instead of drifting in search of external validation or chasing illusions of happiness, we can set intentions that resonate with our deeper sense of purpose. We might redefine success in terms of inner peace, meaningful connections, or contributions to the greater good. These intentions provide a stable anchor, guiding us even when the waters of life get rough. Thus, unraveling illusions, while at times disorienting or painful, ultimately unveils aspects of our humanity that remain hidden when we cling to false constructs. In that sense, it's an invitation to a fuller, more vibrant existence. In the end, the unraveling of illusions amounts to more than just an intellectual exercise. It is a lived process of transformation, marked by moments of insight that can feel like rays of sunlight piercing through a clouded sky. Each step in this process reveals both the fragility and the resilience of our nature. We witness how easily we can be led astray by the allure of comforting stories, yet also how profoundly we can adapt and grow when shown a clearer path. Whether we come to this point gradually or through a sudden event that jolts us awake, the outcome is a re-evaluation of nearly everything: our purpose, our relationships, our responsibilities, and our capacity for joy. It can be unsettling to see so many well-worn assumptions dissolve. But as each illusion fades, it creates space for something more genuine, more encompassing. We realize that real freedom involves not the possession of certainty, but the willingness to continue exploring. The revelations we gather along the way become stepping stones toward a life of greater authenticity and depth. Indeed, the ongoing nature of this journey is what makes it so compelling. Illusions do not all dissolve at once, nor do new insights arrive in a single grand epiphany. We find ourselves continually oscillating between new breakthroughs and old habits, forging a dynamic relationship with truth that resists becoming stagnant. This dynamic nature keeps us engaged, humble, and open to continuous learning. There is no final exam, no concluding chapter that announces our arrival at perfect clarity. Instead, each new day offers another invitation to see with fresh eyes. What may have felt like a revelation yesterday could evolve into a stepping stone for a deeper realization tomorrow. Along the way, practices like mindful breathing, introspection, and compassionate engagement with others help anchor us. They remind us that no matter how disorienting the process can be, we possess the inner resources to navigate it. Little by little, the illusions that once felt so entrenched lose their power. We come to trust our capacity to live, love, create, and connect without the scaffolding of false narratives. And in that trust, we taste a profound release, liberation from the constraints we once accepted as inevitable. From this vantage point, life no longer appears as a puzzle to be solved once and for all, but rather as a flowing tapestry where every thread matters. Each of us brings our own color and texture to the whole. By relinquishing illusions, we don't merely benefit ourselves, we free up room for collective enrichment, inviting others to question their own limiting stories. In that sense, our personal journey transcends the individual, rippling outward with every conversation, every act of kindness, and every moment of courage. Ultimately, it is in that shared unfolding that we find the deeper meaning, knowing that as we awaken from illusions, we contribute to a greater landscape of possibility, making life not just more bearable, but immeasurably richer for all.